Thank you to any of our newcomers. Welcome. Thank you to each of you who have returned continuously for the last 2 years nearly. That's right. Since March of 2020, we have been hosting Emory BrainTalk Live, where we are sharing information about how you can age well. All right? So today, you're going to hear from Dr. Sharon Bergquist. She's a clinician and assistant professor of medicine in the Division of General Medicine and Geriatrics with Emory University. And followed by Dr. Bergquist, you're going to hear Dr. Whitney Wharton. She's been on the program several times, but she's going to talk about stress reduction and resiliency. So, lots to cover and unpack today. Make sure you go grab a pen and paper because you can take lots and lots of notes. And as you just heard, the meeting is being recorded. Thank you to I believe we had 287 individuals on last week. So, again, welcome. I bring you greetings on behalf of the Emory Goizetta Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And each and every week, we have been bringing you Brain Talk Live, where we kick off every session with exercise, right? Because what do we say? What's good for your heart is good for your brain. You got to keep moving, especially with spring coming out. And if you've been hibernating, so to speak, during the winter, now it's time to get active and get moving. And as you know, exercise is neuroprotective. And if you've been following us, you've heard the recommendations from our experts. You need 150 minutes of activity every week. And you can cut that up however you want, but that's the standard. And you're going to hear from Dr. Bergquist, and she's going to give you a little bit more about that. So, welcome. I've done all my housekeeping. I'm going to turn it over to John, and then Dr. Parker is going to come on, and then you'll hear from Dr. Bergquist and Dr. Wharton, and then we'll close out with the announcement for our CEP program. All right? So with that said, remember you can use the Q&A function. You can use the chat function if you want to post questions and need clarification about anything that was shared. All right, John, get us moving today. Again, participate at your own risk. You know, he goes many different paces, so participate at your own risk. Welcome, John.
Hey, hey, hey! I would love to welcome everyone to the Emory Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. Today, you need to push that chair aside, and if you need to sit down or want to sit down, it's okay. But right now, I need you to beautiful, beautiful day and you doing something special for your day, I just need y'all to snap them fingers. And if you sit down, give me that upper body. Turn that waist. Snap them fingers. Snap. Keep that balance going. Nice and smooth. I need your help. Oh. Bring them feet together. Come on. We gotta turn this into a day party. Come on, come on. Wherever you at, come on. Bring it up. Bring it down. Woo! Hey, I'm not finished. Y'all ready? Let's go. I need your hands. Come on. Come on. Step. Step. Hey. Remember, if you need to sit down, sit down. But I need to stay going. Hey. Come on, come on.
It's the same feeling I always seem to get away.
Oh.
There's no mistaking, I'm clearly taken by the simple gift of love.
Hey, hey, hey. There you go. Woo, woo.
This stuff is starting now. This stuff is starting now. This stuff is starting now. My eyes roll in my head. I toss and turn in my bed. The morning when I think about you.
Hey.
Simply put, you're the reason why. Even though I'm real shy.
Roll your shoulders.
Just for you. Cause you are the
Hey, let's go. Let's go. Rock with me. Rock with me. Go. Rock, rock. 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 Down. Down. Twist. Rock. 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 Come on. Get him up. Get him up. Get him up. Get him up. Rest. Woo. You can take a seat. You can take a seat. I know y'all need it. Hey. There we go. Let's get that waistline. Woo. Come on. There we go. Come on now. boogie them amps today.
When the boogie starts to explode.
Let's go. Burn. Burn, burn. Switch it, switch it. Hey, I enjoyed you. I enjoyed you. I enjoyed you. Hey, we must continue on with our journey for health and health management. I want to say to you, I'm John Lewis, and see you later. Bye.
Excellent,
John.
excellent. Thank you, John. Thank you
Yes,
so much. We appreciate you. Bravo. Everyone, give John some love, please. Every week, we are bringing you a different kind of physical activity, right? So it's a little different, but it gets you moving, it gets you motivated, it keeps your heart going just for 10 minutes. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Parker. She's already been getting questions in the chat, but right after Dr. Parker, we're going to hear from Dr. Sharon Bergquist and then Dr. Whitney Wharton. Thank you guys. I see all your comments. Wonderful. Welcome, Dr. Parker.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Ms. Dorbin, for introducing me. We have Dr. Sharon Bergquist, who is an internal medicine doctor whose specialty is aging in place and healthy aging, and Dr. Whitney Wharton, whose specialty, she's a PhD doctor who studies hormones and other things that are associated with brain dysfunction and women in general. March ushers in the Women's Health Month, and we've got a number of speakers, starting with Drs. Bergquist and Dr. Wharton, who are going to talk to us a lot about health issues that are related to aging, yes, but about some issues that are particular to women, of particular concern for women. In the second week, we will be hearing from, I guess, March 15th, we're going to be hearing from Dr. Sharon Hayes from the Mayo Clinic, who's going to be talking to us about cardiovascular disease. Dr. Eric Johnson, who's going to be talking to us about biomarkers. We're also going to be hearing from the Department of Gynecology about estrogenic hormones and their effect on health and aging. And I can't remember who the last person is, but Cornelya and Crystal will put up our roster of speakers for the rest of the month. So at this time, we're going to hear from Dr. Sharon Bergquist again. She's one of our Emory internal medicine doctors whose specialty is healthy aging. Are you ready for that, ladies?
Yes,
Dr.
Crystal's
Bergquist?
going to pull it up.
One quick second.
Crystal, if you can, I can. All right. Thanks, everyone, for being patient with us.
Perfect. So I want to first give everyone just a context into this term healthy aging, because we use it so commonly today, it's easy to lose perspective that it's really just been in recent decades that term has existed. So in the 1950s, one of the longest longitudinal studies on aging began, and it was called the Baltimore Longitudinal Study on Aging. And it was the first study to ask the question, what is normal with aging? And about 20 years into the study, so by the mid-1980s, they presented their findings, which was that a lot of the diseases that we associate with aging, like heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, are not actually a part of aging. These are diseases that are common with aging, but not so much part of the normal aging process. And that study also showed us that people age at different rates. And in the 1980s, the MacArthur Foundation study of successful aging was another landmark study. And this is the study that termed the term successful aging. And it was the first time where instead of gerontology or the science of aging, started to look at what are the components that help us age better. Prior to that, most of the focus of research was on debility and decline with aging. The following decade, we had a Danish twin study that is very frequently quoted that showed us between even twins that are genetically the same, that about 25% of longevity is based on our genes and about 75% is based on lifestyle. It's in our control. And around that time, the blue zones were discovered. And for people who are not familiar with blue zones, the National Geographic and a group of demographers found hotspots throughout the world where people live exceptionally long lives, so centenarians who are very healthy. And they deduced empirically by interviewing these centenarians what are the lifestyle and habits that people across these different cultures had in common. And fast forward to today, or as of 2000, since the human genome has been unraveled, if you will, we are delving deeper now into the biomarkers and understanding aging at a molecular level. So we're looking at interventions that can slow aging and detect age-related diseases at an earlier age. And these are some of the studies that are ongoing at the ADRC, including the Healthy Aging Study, the Emory Healthy Brain Study, amongst other studies. And so I'm going to see if I can advance now. I still can't. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Cornelia. So what's emerged is a biopsychosocial model of healthy aging, where we understand how we age to be a blend of our genes, our lifestyle, and our environment. And as I mentioned previously, we know that as much as 75% of longevity may be due to non-genetic attributes, and oftentimes what we focus about on lifestyle and intervention are behavioral factors that affect how we age and our risk of chronic disease. Specifically, we focus on our diet, how much we exercise, how much we sleep, and as an internal medicine physician, those are the more common conversations we have in the doctor's office. But just as much, and if not a greater part of how we age and our risk for chronic disease is psychological. So it's based on how we manage our stress, social connections we have, whether we can find meaning and purpose, optimism, how we perceive aging. And so next slide, please. And the question is, well, how do these factors work? What is it about our stress or how we eat that influences our susceptibility to disease as well as to aging at an accelerated rate? And it turns out that the same processes that lead to chronic disease are the ones that accelerate the aging process. So some of these, for example, you've probably heard of, but inflammation is one of these. And inflammation you're all familiar with because when you get a cut, you want to get inflammation to heal the cut, or if you've been exposed to a virus or a bacteria, you need to mount an inflammatory response from your immune system to fight a pathogen. But when you have inflammation at a chronic low-grade level, it increases susceptibility to disease and premature mortality. Same with stress, and by the term stress, it's not just psychological stress, but also physical stress. And it's not just whether the stress is present, but it also is whether, how you respond to that stress. And so it's your stress reactivity, and there's a lot around that you can control. Damage seems to contribute. One of the most common forms of damage is oxidative damage. And so in our environment, from sunlight, from tobacco exposure, as well as just from our body generating ATP, we can get damage from free radicals. cells, and we have antioxidants in this antioxidant defense system that tries to keep these free radicals in check before they can damage our DNA and our proteins. And if we don't have enough antioxidants, for example, from phenol type family in foods, such as in fruits and vegetables, we don't adequately maintain our antioxidant defenses. Epigenetics are yet another way where our lifestyle and behavioral factors influence our risk of aging. And epigenetics literally means epi, on top of our genes. So these are modifications where how we express our genes can change. So whether we turn on good genes or turn off bad genes. So for example, curcumin, the active component in turmeric, can epigenetically modify your genes to more optimally express your genes. And then there's a lot of interest this decade in omics. And omics is this broader umbrella of not just genomics, but also epigenomics, and the proteins that we express, that are expressed by our genes. So proteomics, the metabolic products, the metabolomics. So it's this whole kind of genre of delving deeper within our genome to find these earlier marks and these biomarkers for disease. So this is helping us lead the way in precision medicine. And next slide, please. Thank you. So the question is, so knowing what we know, what can you do today to start adding life to years and adding years to your life? So by that, I mean living longer, but also preventing disease. And to get more into the specifics of diet, 1 in 5 deaths around the world are now linked to diet. It's one of the biggest contributors to how we age. And I'm going to show a slide coming up next when we get into more detail about what is it about diet, like what are the factors, because the term diet is so broad in general that I want to speak more to the specifics of what you can do. Exercising can also reduce mortality by 31%. So the physical activity guidelines recommend 150 minutes or roughly 30 minutes, 5 or more days a week of walking or any aerobic activity, plus at least twice a week of strength resistance exercises. Sleeping, trying to get at least 7 or more than 8 or 9 hours even of sleep is really important. Getting less than 7 can shorten your lifespan. Stress resilience is extremely important, and I think we're going to hear about how to build that resilience throughout this talk series. Loneliness is an epidemic that probably doesn't get enough attention, but when we lack high quality relationships, our risk of death can be 50% higher compared to people that have strong relationships. And another really important component is feeling a sense of purpose.
Yeah, she's in the break room. Hi, how are you?
And feeling a sense of purpose
Okay.
is extremely important because it can influence how you age almost more than some of these behavioral factors. So next slide, please.
Yeah, no problem. So I don't know if she's on her laptop.
Next slide, please.
We think she's already.
Okay, thanks. When we look at diet, and I want to delve into this a little deeper, the best study that has really illustrated the dietary factors that contribute to longevity is a study called the Global Burden of Disease. And here what you're looking at are an analysis of dietary factors assessed in 195 countries over the span of 27 years. And as you can see here, this red line are the number of deaths attributed to diet from heart disease. The orange line is from deaths from diabetes. The lighter orange is deaths from cancer. And the lightest color is from other causes. And this graph is attributing the number of deaths to different dietary components. For example, we hear a lot that eating red meat is bad for our health. And if you look at deaths attributed to red meat intake, you can see that that's at the very bottom of the slide in terms of number of deaths that are caused by red meat. If we go a little higher, looking at deaths from processed meat, that's like cold cuts, for example, more deaths are attributed to that than from red meat. If you go to the middle of the graph, you could see that diets that don't have enough legumes contribute to a moderate amount of deaths. In the middle of the slide, you'll also see if we're not getting enough fiber, our risk of death goes up. But these highest bars at the very top are from diets that are low in vegetables, low in nuts and seeds, low in fruits, low in whole grains. And the top of the slide is diets that are too high in sodium. And the take home here is that by adding more whole grains, fruits, nuts, seeds, and vegetables, we can reduce our rate of premature death more than by reducing sugar sweetened beverages, processed meats, and red meats, which is what we definitely focus a lot more on from a public health standpoint. Next slide, please. And I also want to talk a little bit more about purpose in life. So what you're seeing on the right is a graph from two very large cohort studies. One was the Rush Memory and Aging Project, another the Minority Aging Research Study. And in 1,238 people that were followed over 5 years, you can see in the lower bar graph, those are people that were in the 90th percentile, having the highest purpose in life. And then the top graph are the people that had the lowest purpose in life. They were in the lowest 10th percentile. And the rate of mortality, of death over the 5-year period, and the people who had the highest purpose in life was about 57% of the rate of people who had the lowest purpose in life. And that's, quite a large difference from this specific component. And I want to speak more about purpose in life in the next slide, because if you could advance, please. Because it's one thing to, say diet, but understanding the specific dietary components matters. And it's another to say, well, it's important to find purpose versus, what can you do to find purpose and meaning? And there is an evidence-based way to approach finding meaning, and it's called life crafting. And then the reference is provided at the bottom of the slide for people who are more interested in this. And life crafting is based on research. It's called a wise intervention, in that a lot of psychological interventions to change a behavior typically can be multiple sessions over a large amount of time. Wise interventions are either one-time or very short, brief interventions that can change outlook, change behavior. And life crafting, which involves just writing your personal narrative in sessions as short as 15 minutes, can make a difference in your behavior and your ability to lead a purposeful life. And what it is specifically, it's a process in which people actively reflect on their present and future life. They set goals for important areas of their life in their social, career, and leisure time, and if required, make concrete plans and undertake actions to change these areas in a way that is more congruent with their values and wishes. So specifically, it's taking time to find out what you stand for, and not just envisioning it, but feeling your best future self. Because when you tap into the feeling or the emotional component, you're tapping into your subconscious, which generally understands and knows what you truly want. And sometimes the cognitive brain, the conscious brain, can filter it based on, say, what your aunt always wanted you to do or what your great-grandfather wanted you to do. So tapping into feelings helps keep you aligned with what you truly want for your own future. And then writing a narrative puts where you were in the past, your present, and your future all in context, because when you're finding purpose, it's more than just SMART goals of what you want for your future. You want to put it in the context of why you've done the things you've done in your past, where you want to go, and how that adds meaning to what you're doing today. So it's more broad to do life crafting than just to set SMART goals. And then it is important to set those goals, and number two, and how to make it happen. So goals can be large, they can be theoretical, but you need a very specific goal attainment plan so you can work towards that goal. And then making a public commitment about your future plans. It's a big part of moving forward towards developing purpose. So I'll stop there and then let the next person go.
Thank you, Dr. Bergquist. At this time, we're going to have Dr. Whitney Wharton talk to us about, I think, the same thing. Whitney, Dr. Whitney Wharton.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm getting my slides. Let's see. Okay. Are you able to see these?
No, I may
Not
be
yet.
closed.
Okay.
She has sharing properties.
Mhm.
Not yet, Dr. Wharton.
Okay, working on it. Apologies, we're working on this. Let's see.
Okay, no worries. We are sometimes at the mercy of the.
We are. Can you see that?
All right, there we go.
There we go. Perfect. So, thank you all so much for having me back today. I really appreciate it. My name is Whitney Wharton, and I'm a cognitive neuroscientist and a clinical investigator with the Emory School of Nursing and the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. I'm trying to figure out a way to also not see, to show my, that's okay. All right. So this is a presentation that's similar to the last one that you heard, but it doesn't hurt to hear it in a different way. And also, I think everything that Dr. Bergquist mentioned are good things to keep in mind. So my presentation is about attitude and the brain. And so I talk a lot about modifiable risk factors. And I think we don't often think about attitude and mood and loneliness and sense of purpose as a modifiable risk factor in the same way that we talk about hypertension or high cholesterol or diabetes. And, we know that that attitude and perception of oneself and the number of individuals in your social circle and indices like loneliness, we know that these all contribute to brain health. And the good news is that this is a modifiable risk factor and something that I think we need to learn more about, and that we need to share more information about as far as interventions that are able to be improved in this domain. So there's a number of studies that have investigated attitude and the brain. What we know collectively is that subjective well-being has been linked to cognition and associated brain changes, which predominantly happen in the frontal lobe of the brain and also the amygdala. And a lot of this research actually comes from studies where we have twins. So two people that are identical, potentially that have never met before. So two people who are born from the same parents. We've studied these types of people and looked at their subjective indices of well-being and loneliness and measures of depression. And what we found is that there actually is a genetically correlated link with both positive and negative attitude. Negative, for instance, would be negative affect, high anxiety, low energy, body aches and pains, sometimes called fibromyalgia, and also pessimism. On the other hand, we have also found genetic correlates to positive attitude, including high quality of life, sense of purpose, and positive aspects of caregiving for those of us that are caregivers. So we know that there is a genetic link, and we also know that it is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. We also know that attitude affects structural indices of our brain. Again, I mentioned the frontal lobe and the amygdala. And there was a study conducted back in 2016, which showed that in individuals who are between the ages of 53 all the way up to 105, that there was a reduced risk of clinical strokes in individuals who had benefits, who are showing higher sense of purpose, less depression, less anxiety, and then an increase in these negative attitude and behavioral outcomes were reduced with an increase of silent strokes, or also known as microinfarcts. And because we are in Women's Health Month, I wanted to point out that women actually experience depression at twice the rate of men. And this dates all the way back to 1999, when one of the first seminal studies came out looking at women specifically and depression, and this continues today. Also, fewer than half of women will ever seek care to mitigate the effects of depression or anxiety. And what we also find is that many women, more than 50% of women, actually think that it's normal for women to be depressed, particularly as we transition through menopause, and that we don't have to seek out treatment, that this is something that not only is a part of menopause, but something that women naturally go through, and that is actually a normal part of aging, which is not the case. And there was another study by Wilson that was conducted or published in 2016. And that study asked a couple of really important questions. So they asked, in the last month, how often did the people that you know do a number of things? So one is leave you out of activities that you would have enjoyed, had unwanted intrusion or advice, either from a family member or from a work associate or others, failure by others to provide help for them, or have people been unsympathetic or insensitive to the person's needs. And what this study found was that over a period of almost 5 years, 4.8 years, the more negative social interactions that individuals had was associated with higher incidence of mild cognitive impairment and more rapid cognitive decline. So this was one of the first studies that objectively showed that negative interactions with other people contributed to clinical disease onset, which has been related to Alzheimer's disease. I also want to mention that stress and depression, of course, are more likely to be experienced by individuals who are caregivers versus individuals who are not caregivers. And this is completely, this is a common concern and a common feature of being a caregiver. But again, this is not something that a caregiver cannot seek help for, just as much as a caregiver, is not caring for their own physiology, including diabetes or hypertension. This is something that we need to keep an eye on. So what we know is that 60% of Alzheimer's disease caregivers rate the stress of caregiving as high or very high. And on average, 40% of Alzheimer's caregivers suffer from depression. And this can be situational depression, and it can also be the result of isolation, because caregivers tend to be so, invested in our necessary caregiving role that we really forget to take time for ourselves. And we forget to, not only take sort of solace in things that make us individually happy, but we tend to, kind of neglect our own health care. So we're less likely to go to the doctor. We don't eat properly. We don't have time to exercise because the caregiving role is really taking the front seat, necessarily so, but it's really important for caregivers to take care of ourselves as well. So as I mentioned, the good news about this is that mood and depression and anxiety, all of these are to a great extent able to be improved and mitigated. So then there's a lot of ways to do this, and I want to spend some time sharing some of that with you. So number one, if you are a woman going through the menopausal transition, if you are someone who is recently retired, if you are a caregiver, these natural transitions in our lives also are accompanied by a psychological and mood related transition. And that is completely normal. That is fine. It's just really good to keep it in check. And it's really good to make sure that you are taking care of your psychological well-being just as much as if you are caring for your physical well-being. And this will not only make you a more productive person if you are still in the workforce, it will make you a better caregiver, it will make you a better friend, and it will make you more able to do things that you want to do in your everyday life. So one takeaway is that, first take care of your body. So make sure to go to your annual primary care physician visits, keep going to the doctor, go to your annual wellness visits. If you have symptoms of anxiety or depression, please do share that with your doctor. A lot of people go on antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, if nothing else, just for a short period of time. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Zero wrong with that. So it is no more someone's fault that they might be experiencing depression and anxiety than if you, were in a car accident and broke your arm and you have to go to the doctor for that. So please treat your mood just like you're treating your physical body. Also, go outside. Exercise is great, like we just heard about. It also increases your vitamin D, which is kind of a natural mood enhancer. And then, I'm not asking you to not pay attention to things going on in the world today, but do things that make you happy. So, turn off the news. I feel like a lot of times there's a lot of gloom and doom, aside from what is obviously happening right now with Ukraine. But aside from that, I think there are certain things that people tend to watch on the news channels that makes it always, even before the past 2 weeks, seem like today is the worst day ever. And so, watch a movie instead, turn it on the Lifetime channel, or again, even better, go outside. Also, as I've mentioned, when we go through major life transitions, try to look at this like just a new chapter in your life, and something to be appreciated and considered is new and maybe different communication methods that you might have with your caregiver or your care recipient or your family or your friends. My parents, back when they retired, they had actually they hadn't they each had a, you know, a pretty involved occupation. And all of a sudden, when both of them retired, they all of a sudden had a lot of time with each other. And they kind of realized that, you know, if they weren't talking about work or, you know, us with their kids or what they were going to do that day, that they had a lot of empty space in their conversations. So I think at first that was a little bit, that was new and something to get used to, and something that they felt like they needed to fill that space with something, a semblance of a to-do list. And, you know, we talked a lot about, you know, kind of reframing the conversation and talking about what you want to do next. You know, this is something that is a time to, you know, if you're able to celebrate and talk about, you know, what you want to do in your latter years. So I think that that's a great perspective, and that's a new thing to explore. Also, you know, for those of us that don't have partners or that, you know, are kind of living alone, reach out to others, reach out to people that you maybe knew in the past, reach out to new people, try to form new relationships. And as we age, I guarantee you other people are in the same boat as us. If we are kind of questioning what we're doing now and what the next stages are going to be. And I have had very few participants, you know, sitting in my office with me that didn't have some semblance of, you know, loneliness or sometimes social isolation, particularly when I'm speaking with caregivers. So you are not alone, and please reach out to other people. And, you know, I guarantee you're not going to be by yourself in that boat. Other strategies include reducing negative relationships and activities. And one way you can do this is by really paying attention to activities that you participate in now, and really just kind of, you know, you don't necessarily have to write a narrative or you don't have to do any work, but really think about how something makes you feel. So after you have a conversation with someone on the phone, you know, do you feel good after that? Do you feel full, or do you feel stressed out? How do you feel? And is that something that you can, you know, that you can kind of take away, or at least reduce the time that you spend doing that activity? What makes you happy, and try to improve that type of activity. Also guard your time. So if you do have someone, and I have a few members in my family there, it's very difficult to guard my time, but they want to call and talk for hours on end, and it always is a little bit negative. So I'm trying to personally be better at guarding my time and just saying, you know, I appreciate you calling and I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to go ahead and end the phone call now because I have other things I want to do. And I feel like that's absolutely fine to say, because that's part of my own mental health. And I don't want to, that is something that I'm not choosing to spend my time doing. Also taking time for yourself. So whether that's going outside, doing, you know, gardening, taking a walk, anything like that. Volunteering is a really great resource if that's something that you're able to do. Something that makes you feel good, and sometimes things that make you feel good are things that you do for others. And then I wanted to end with the slide, which, you know, goes kind of with volunteering, and that's what we do with the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. Is if you want to be involved in research, we have a study right now called E2, and the contact information is below, and the phone number is 404-712-2654. And it will put you in contact with our clinical research coordinator named Kelly, and she's phenomenal. And we collect all of these data in our research. So, you know, we're very interested in biomarkers, sleep, and exercise. We also collect a lot of indices about you know, mood and depression and anxiety, and we track you over time, and also try to mitigate some of these modifiable risk factors so that we can all age in a healthy way. And we try to put you in touch with these resources that will help you be able to do that. So thank you so much for your time today. And I very much look forward to speaking with a number of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wharton. I think I see a couple of questions in the chat. Progress in curing dementia or Alzheimer's disease. I think that's one question that we can talk about. There's another one that talks about for your studies, the one that you just referenced. Tell me a little bit more about what's involved in becoming a part of those estrogen studies. Do you do MRIs? Do you do lumbar punctures? Can you tell us what?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for the question. So we have a number of studies that we are doing right now in our research lab, and Kelly is the person that would be the contact for all of those studies. Our lab is primarily focused on Alzheimer's disease prevention. We have studies for women. We have studies for caregivers. We have studies for that involve biomarkers, and we have studies that do not involve biomarkers. So it really, what I'm trying to do is assess your comfortability with a number of these studies, and then we will find something that fits you. A lot of our studies are biomarker heavy. So that's, again, looking at biomarkers is the very best way for me to be able to see what good things and what potentially not good things are happening in someone's brain. So we do have lumbar punctures, we have MRIs, we have blood draws, but again, this is a research study. So most of these for most studies are voluntary. But if you wanted to give us a call, we can find something that works for you for sure.
Okay, another study, another question in there. I guess the question is, how does this estrogen study affect the curing of dementia or Alzheimer's disease? How does that work?
That's a great question. So we know that women are more at risk for Alzheimer's disease than men. We don't know why that happens. We have 2 studies right now that are trying to actively answer that question. One reason we think that happens is because of biology, and the other reason we think is because of the lived experience of being a woman. And so we're trying to get at both of those questions. So we ask a bunch of questions about physiology, and one way that we do that is look at circulating levels of sex hormones in the blood and also in spinal fluid in women and in men, because men also are very important to have as a component of this study, because what we also don't talk about is that men go through kind of a menopausal transition as well, called andropause. And so not only are we inviting women into this study, but men are very important. And that is an age-related, but also a seasonal-related hormone change that we don't know a lot about at all, and how that is connected to Alzheimer's disease. So there is the physiology, and then the lived experience. Women tend to be caregivers more than men. We tend to be caregivers when we're younger, and we are primarily charged with raising children. And then also as we age, we tend to be caregivers for our spouse or in parents that might become afflicted with a memory disorder, cancer, or in my case, something else. But that usually traditionally will fall on the shoulders of women. So we're also interested in things that we talked about today. So things like stress, caregiver stress, and trying to mitigate those to see if we might be able to reduce the likelihood that someone will themselves as a caregiver develop cognitive decline as a result of that caregiver role, which is in tandem but separate from the physiology that I just talked about.
Okay, there's a question, would participants in the study get test results and could they correct any deficiencies if found?
Sure. So anything that is clinically relevant that we find, then we give to you. Absolutely. If there is, if your blood pressure is off the charts, if we look at a marker of sleep, if we look at a marker, sleep is a huge thing, especially for women and especially for caregivers, and especially for midlife individuals who are concerned about aging. If we give you the readout of a lot of these markers, anything that would be helpful for your doctor to know, then we give you the results of that test. Absolutely. I also should mention that, we operate under a 100% transparency. So any publication that I have, any talk that I give, any project that even one of my students does, we put on my lab website so that everyone that takes part in the study, as well as other just people in the community, can go to the website and see what we found as a result of your participation. So we are very clear with our results.
One last question for Dr. Wharton, and we will be making an exit because it's time to end our program. Are participants in your estrogen study required to live in Atlanta or Georgia?
No, you're not. As long as you can come and attend annual visits over a period of 2 years. So for instance, if you were going to come in today, I don't need to see you for another year. And then after that, I don't need to see you for another year. So we have actually scheduled in the next couple of weeks a number of participants that either have family here or have moved out of state that we've worked with for a number of years. And they might come to Atlanta to visit a friend or visit their children, a family member, and we invite you to come in. We also work very closely with you. So if you want to do an all-day visit and get everything done in one time, we make that happen. If you want to divide it into 2 days, we make that happen too. So
good.
Whatever helps you.
Can you please put the number again in the chat, Whitney? Dr. Wharton. Thank you, Dr. Wharton. At this time, we'll have Matt Doiron announce what we're going to do for cognitive empowerment, but Dr. Wharton is putting her number in the chat so that if you're interested in participating in this particular study, you can call and get enrolled. There it is. There's the website for Dr. Whitney Wharton's lab and her study. Okay, Mr. Doiron.
Hey everyone, so today for CP Community Live, which is a different webinar, it's going to be happening in just 1 minute. We're going to be joined by Dr. Casey Vickers, and she is going to be talking about different types of memory strategies that you can do for remembering different types of tasks and people's and names in your life. So if you feel, and we all have difficulty with that, but if you feel like you want to learn some strategies to try and improve some of those skills, come on by to CP Community Live. I'm going to be posting a link to register for our event if you already registered. Just need to follow the same link as always, and hope to see you all there.
Thank you, Matt. That's it for me. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. Please come back next week when, again, March is Women's Month, and we have some interesting presentations for you in the next couple of weeks. Next week, we will be hearing from gynecology, talking about estrogens in women. And Dr. Wharton is getting an endocrinologist to explain the hormones of aging as it relates to women and to men. And we'll follow that number with one of our Emory gynecologists. Again, Dr. Wharton has put her information in the chat. We're looking forward to seeing you next week. The week after next, we'll have Dr. Sharon Hayes from the Mayo Clinic and Dr. Eric Johnson from here in our Department of Neurology. Thank you.